Hello, this is Laura O'Brien from the Irish Pagan School, and I'm here with one of our teachers, Geraldine Byrne. Today, we're going to be talking about magical wards, protecting yourself, protecting your house, protecting your family, and your living space or your property or whatever that looks like. We're going to be going through a basic structure of how to do that, which includes, at its most baseline level, includes cleansing your space, setting your intention, choosing your materials, creating your wards, and maintaining your wards. So just before we dive in here, I do want to mention that we have a free gift for you for the year here from Irish Pagan School. We have a free guide, which is the Trustworthy Resources Checklist. So you can get that at irishpagan.school/checklist. And if you're watching on YouTube, there'll be a link below to that as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Geraldine, who will introduce herself. Geraldine, why am I talking to you about magical wards today?
I've no idea. I just came out for a chat. Hi, I'm Geraldine Morkinsburn. I am, as I said, I teach at the IPS. I'm a poet, I'm a writer, and I write life rites and celebrations and ceremonies, and I write fiction and all kinds of things. But I am a practitioner of Irish magic, and I am in particular practitioner of Draped Kyo, which is the magic of word and sound, which is a huge part of Irish traditions. And I am a lifelong student of folklore and folk magic practices. So one of the things that for me is you have to do is to you live this. You don't just, it's not just an academic or an intellectual pursuit. And wards and hexes and keeping your actual space, your house and your space within the house and also your person safe is one of the fundamental things our ancestors have practiced for thousands of years, right up to very modern times. It was just a natural part of, you might carry a big stick when you went out, but you also carried protection. And, people put their trust in different talismans and stuff. So that's why we're here today.
Yeah. So we can start with maybe the first point there. So cleansing your space. Now, obviously, I've broken these 5 points down to the most absolute basic, and this is going to vary by tradition. It's going to vary by person. It's going to vary by situation, by experience level, by all of that. But I think, we agreed kind of before that these 5 points of cleansing, setting your intention, choosing your materials, creating the wards, and maintaining the wards were just the absolute foundations of it. But we are
Yes.
going to obviously dip into this on each point. So within the Irish magic tradition, the Draocht tradition, how would you personally go about cleansing your space?
Sound, noise, absolutely. I have done this for other people and I've done it for myself. And for me, that's the most natural way to go. And it literally doesn't have to be fancy. You need absolutely no musical ability whatsoever. But if you think your voice is the first instrument man ever had, we raise our voices. You can shout, you can chant, you can take a word that has power for you and you can just shout it over and over again. But a very basic traditional way of doing it would be to move from room to room and driving bad energy, old energy. And it's not just even bad energy, old energy is important.
Mm.
Energy in a house becomes stale and you want to freshen it. So for me, I would have a bodhrán, the Irish traditional frame drum. I would have behind you on the wall. I have a few of them. Um, I would have a saucepan and a spoon and bang it. Anything that makes
We
noise.
just, as we're recording this, we just passed New Year's Eve actually, and one of the Irish folk traditions is literally to get saucepans and a wooden spoon and just bang it all the way through the house
Yeah,
to clear the energies. So it, it,
that's
it
it.
is a huge part of the Irish folk tradition still to this day.
And it's literally practiced. And some form of this noise making is practiced all through Ireland. And you see it coming up in different ways. But its basic idea is almost always the same to drive the energy out, to freshen it up. And you're thinking about New Year's Eve there, the idea of opening the back door and greeting or saying goodbye to the old year and letting the new year in the front door. Again, if you think about that, you're letting air into your house, you're freshening things, you're shouting out goodbye, like a welcome. That's using word and sound and draped kjol, and anything you do like that. Now, there are people who come obviously from maybe a Wiccan tradition or whatever who might prefer to use salt or water, or there's no wrong way to do it if it resonates with you. But if you are looking for an authentically Irish tradition, sound, noise, clean your house. There's no point in putting barriers and boards and hexes on your house. If you've trapped all that bad energy in there, you're now in there with it. And it is, I think it's actually probably the simplest mistake that most people make when they're trying to make a space their own. And if you think within a house, I shared like with people for many years, and you have to respect people have different views on things, and people have different attitudes, and some people will take a miss if you're doing something overt that they find a little disturbing, which would be me usually. But I found that my space within the house, if I didn't maintain that, I was uncomfortable in the house.
Absolutely.
So it might just be your bedroom if you're sharing. It might be the bedroom and a section of the living room that you use, but you have the right to make a little space for yourself there.
Yeah. And with the idea, I know we're both quite familiar with the neurodiversity and neurospiciness from our own families and our own experiences. But even with that in mind, I do just want to make the point as well that just from a purely practical point of view, just physically cleaning the space as well.
Yes.
Is actually like that should maybe be your first step, at least like doing a bit, doing what you can. I'm not trying to shame anybody. And believe me, in an ADHD household, believe me, I understand what, all that's involved in that. But all of that being said, every single psychological study about mental health and, just feelings and energy and all the rest of it will tell you that having a clear, clean, clutter-free space is better than not,
Yes.
So I would hate to kind of, talk about cleansing your space without actually talking about just that kind of practicality of it as well,
And for some people as well, if their energy goes on that and that's all they have, that is enough.
That can be enough, exactly.
You have to tailor what you do to your own needs. And there's no point in setting out on something that's meant to protect you and make you feel better, and it makes you feel worse and inadequate.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Figure out how much you can do.
Exactly. And like cleansing your space could be as simple as changing your bed in your bedroom, and then literally kind of standing up to bring your sound into it, standing up, clapping your hands and going, now we're done,
Yeah,
and
that's
it can actually be that simple,
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and in the GHQ class that I taught for you, we talk a lot about humming. Humming is a really underrated activity spiritually and magically. Humming can attune you to the space in which you are. And you'll find that as you hum, you might start at one pitch, but when you stop being very conscious, you just keep humming, your pitch will actually lower or rise, and you're tuning into that room. If that's what it takes for you, do you know what I mean? That can be a really good thing. Sound and noise, and as you say, even clapping your hands like this, it all adds up, and it's all worth doing as much as you can.
Exactly. And I suppose hand in hand then with that is the idea of setting your intention. You can actually be setting your intention as you're kind of working through your cleansing of your space, or you can do it as a separate activity if you like then. But as you're cleansing your space, you should be doing it, whatever you're doing, you should be doing it with that intention. I will just give a kind of an honorable mention to the fact that we don't culturally appropriate other people's traditions. When, if you were to Google like cleansing your space energetically, there's going to be a lot of reference to smudging, which, is a particularly culturally sensitive term. And we just, you don't have to do that. But the idea of smoke cleansing is also practical through many different traditions, including the Irish tradition, including, you know, we do have a, mostly for health now, in fairness, but we do have a, 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 a sweat houses,
Yeah.
archaeologically, we have an archaeological tradition, let's just call it that, because
Oh,
that's as much as we can actually say, right? From the kind of 1800s, 1900s, of these small stone huts, effectively, where you would crawl into them and light a peat or a turf fire and have that smoke and the sweat and actually have it as a cleansing process. Now, Ireland is a very damp country, so there would be obvious health benefits to this as
yeah.
well, especially if somebody was ill, to be able to put them into that small enclosed space and actually like sweat it out of them, cleanse it out of them. You know, and I mean, this is how a fever works in your body and your own natural immune system. So, like, all of that is part of it as well. But I just wanted to kind of give that honorable mention to the smoke clearing traditions. You can do that without culturally appropriating anybody
Yes.
else. You can make your
And
own bundles of herbs, dried herbs. Mugwort is one that was used here. There's any kind of native Irish herb really would have been used, I suppose, at some point. Um, but or like a spray or like a salt spray, as Geraldine mentioned. Salt is a natural cleanser as well, so you could literally put salt water into a bottle and spray it around a room. You know, like, there are many different ways of doing this, and it really is up to you. You know, whether you're working in a particular tradition, or, you know, you may be part of a culture or a tradition that uses smudging, and obviously that's fine then at that point. um but it is up to you kind of how you do it. But it is a very important first step. Sorry, Jar, I think I kind of cut you off.
that's the, I agree
Yeah,
completely.
okay,
As
awesome.
a,
Yeah, so any kind of incense purification tools, anything like that. But again, at its simplest, you know, clear the space, um, as to, you know, to the best of your ability, clean it, set things right, set things in order as much as you can. Use the sound, use the smoke, use the sprays, use whatever you need to use, and kind of make sure that you're starting with that clean slate. Okay.
and you were saying about setting intention and doing it separately or during it.
Mm.
I would, I have to say, and again, it is entirely up to the person and it's up to how everybody's process
Yeah.
works. But where possible, I would make a plea for doing always do it as an integral part of what you're doing
Yeah.
as you clean.
Yeah.
I would, if someone came to me and said, what's the best way to do it? I would genuinely say, as you're cleaning,
Yeah.
because every action that you do it shouldn't be like, oh, this is a mundane action and this is a magical action. And then, no, the whole thing comes together. It's integral.
Mm.
If you set your intention as you clean, as you tidy, as you purify, as you cleanse, yes, you can, there's nothing stopping you from then stopping and having a little maybe moment of very seriously contemplating your intent,
Yes.
but it will be so much stronger for having been part. And then that cleansing
Mhm.
is stronger because your intention is
Absolutely. Yeah.
attached to it. So
Yes.
yeah, that
Absolutely.
would be,
Yeah.
and as I say, I am aware that for some people, one thing has to happen after the, and
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
But when you can, try to integrate them, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. I think one of the things I value about your teaching, Ger, and it's something that we really do hold of value within the Irish Pagan School, is like, none of this is prescriptive, right? What we really want by creating this content, by teaching our classes, by whatever we're doing, is to give people the tools that they can then make their practices something that actually suits them, suits their life, suits their experience, you know. So please don't take it that there's any kind of one true way bullshit going on here, because that is definitely not our intention as we come into
No,
this.
no. Let us keep our
Right?
intention here.
Yes.
And that is so true. And I think that there is a problem. I mean, obviously, when you set out to teach something, to lay something out, there has to be some structure,
Of
or
course.
you're just rambling. You know?
Yeah.
But the problem is, and I think possibly, I mean, we all come from like an educational background in the sense where we were taught things by rote, and there's a feeling like there are rules, and these rules should be obeyed. But we're not. We're adults. as long as what you're doing is rooted in an authentic understanding of Irish traditions, your personal version of that is authentic.
Yeah.
If it's just, oh, I'm just going to pick a bit here and pick a bit there and take everything out of context, that's the only thing that people go, no, please don't do that.
Yeah.
But it's a living tradition. It evolves.
Absolutely,
And it can't stop evolving. That's my child.
Yes.
Off you go. And I can hear Mark in the background going,
part of the living tradition is that we are, we have families.
Yeah, that's it, absolutely. But I am very firm on the idea that we should respect the roots of our tradition and our heritage. But I hate to see people tied up in knots about, am I doing it right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you know what? Intention goes a huge way here. If you are intending to do it right, if your intention is to honor rather than appropriate, then you are honoring this. It's exactly. Intention goes a long way.
Exactly. And, our like, if we had to boil down our methodology in the Irish Pagan School, I think we'd all be, for all the variation across all the different teachers and our backgrounds and our experience and all the rest of it, what it would come down to is, I believe, to learn, as in, actually learn what it is and where it's coming from genuinely, get those authentic resources. Again, there's a free gift available for you in that trustworthy resources checklist, so you can actually learn. And then to experience, to actually put that into practice and to try it out for yourself and see what's going to work for you. Yes. And then the third step then in that methodology would be to integrate that, to actually repeat that process, to bring it into your life, as you're saying, not separate out the mundane from the magical or the spiritual, because that is a huge part of Irish paganism, as far as I can see it, of Irish magic, is the integration into the everyday,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like Irish paganism, like if you go back 200-300 years, and a lot of our understanding of folklore and folk magic really is from the last 400 to 500 years. Yeah. Those people were Catholic, those people were Christian, those people were non-believers. The idea that there was an unbroken paganism is so simply doesn't exist. But there was an unbroken just spiritual attunement to the other world, to the idea of the pishos and the superstitions and the she and it was all part of life, and it was as real as your neighbor living next door.
Absolutely. And that's why we call them living traditions, because it's not a living religion. It's not, it's not that there's a spiritual lineage that goes back to the Bronze Age. Like, none of us are here for that. None of us are claiming that. Anybody who's claiming that, by the way, is full of shit and should not be listened to. It's not a trustworthy resource.
And is not on your trustworthy resource list.
No, which you can get with the link below. So step one, step two, but we're going to just, we're going to call step two to set your intention. If we take it as, at that point, once you've cleared and cleaned, to clearly state your intention for creating those wards specifically. And it can just be as simple as, I'm creating these wards to protect my home and those within it from negative energies. It can be as simple as that. It can get very much more complicated at that point if you want. This is the point maybe where, if you were working with ancestors or deities, or you wanted to bring different elements, or call on, if you have something that like some kind of nature spirit that would be in your area that you think would be useful, or something like that could be maybe brought in, especially if you're doing maybe boundary magic outside your home. That'd be more where that kind of boundary between you and nature meets. So all of those things maybe will be brought in at that point with the set your intention. What do you think of that, Cher? Sorry, I'm rambling here.
Yeah, I just actually wanted to add something there, because I live in an urban environment and I consider myself to be an urban pagan, and I deal with the city as a living entity. Yeah. And one of my duties as a guardian in the city is setting boundaries and walking boundaries. So there's a sense in my area where I have my boundaries that I maintain, and it's much larger than outside the home, but I help that area be free from negativity.
Yes. Yeah.
The idea, as you say, like you've got your space within the house, you've got your front door, back door, you've got your house, you've got your garden if you have a garden, but then you have an environment outside of that as well.
Yeah. Your
This does
neighborhoods.
not neighborhoods,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
This does not necessarily stop at your front door. And again, when you're starting off, then it might be wise to stop at your front door.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
what you can manage.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do think that as you grow in the practice, it is important to remember to extend those boundaries as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And if you are someone who, like myself, is interested in urban paganism and actually lives that, and
Yeah.
is like connected to the city in which you live, or the town in which you live, the community that you're part of, then you can actually bring some of this outward
Yeah.
into that space as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. And that goes for rural as well, obviously.
Yes.
I would have done very, very similar when I was living out in the wilds of Roscommon. We had a local
Yeah.
bog that was part of my boundaries, and there were sacred sites and forts and everything in the area. There's my child just come home. um, and yeah, so like all of that is part of it. But if you, as Jer said, if you're just starting out, you can literally, I mean, you can make this your bed. Your bed
Yeah.
could be your warded space so that you can sleep
Yeah.
safe at night. Make it as small as feels manageable to you,
Yes.
or as
Yes.
large as feels manageable, definitely. But yes, that intention of, okay, so I've done step one, I've done step two, whatever way you want to mix that around, that's fine. But I'm creating these wards to protect my home and those within it from negative energies, any variation on that, obviously. So then we kind of get into the idea of choosing your materials. And obviously, this is going to vary hugely depending on personal practice and tradition and all the rest of it.
So many different
So many
ways.
different ways. I mean, you've got your materials, and then we're going to create the wards. And again, both of those are just there's 101 different ways I could think of off the top of my head. But if you're using things to create wards, you could have crystals, herbs, symbols. You could use plants. You could use stones. You could use. I use the Om. Um, that kind of goes into more creating the wards, I suppose. But these next two steps are definitely a blend of it. So Geraldine, do you want to address those separately, materials and then creating the wards?
I think yes. I just,
Yeah.
do you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually share a
Oh,
screen with
please
you
do.
there,
Yeah,
and
please
I'll
do.
describe it for in case people are listening rather
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
than watching. Now, these are two pictures of two. You'll get them in almost every kind of gift shop or Irish Celtic themed shop.
Mm-hmm.
They're transfers for your window. You put them on, they have a nice Celtic design on them. They're see-through and they go on the glass.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one on my back door, and that's the one on my front door. They
Right.
cost me approximately $2.99 each.
Mm.
I have had them for donkey's years.
Yeah.
I got this when I was living in rented accommodation. I'm married 15 years, and it would have been another 5 years maybe before that. So they're about 20 years old.
Yeah.
And I lived in a house sharing with people. Again, there's a limit, to how much claim you can put on other people's spaces.
Mm.
But these were lovely, pretty things that I used as talismans,
Mm-hmm.
that I imbued with my intent, and that I placed on my front door and my back door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were my first, like in my own living space, you know what I mean? Kind of physical wards that I
Yeah.
made.
Yeah.
So I just offer them here because sometimes like literally, it can be something as simple and accessible as that, as a transfer that you like, that has a symbol you resonate with, that you use.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can.
Yeah. My first ward was I had just discovered paganism at 16, and I got a stone from the beach, kind of a flat stone, and I literally just with acrylic paint or maybe even permanent marker, I can't remember now, because I've had a couple of variations over the years, but I just drew a spiral on it. And in my brain, it was the beach is a boundary, has always been a boundary. So it was a beach stone for me. It wasn't a fancy crystal, it wasn't anything like that. And the spiral then, to my mind, the action, and this is more, again, the beach stone would be to choose the material, and then creating the wards, we're kind of jumping between those again. But drawing that spiral on it, I put it on my window ledge in my bedroom when I was 16. I was still living in my parents' house, and that was a danger point as far as I was concerned, right? So I literally just sat on my window ledge, and the spiral then would act as a kind of a trap, basically. This is how I kind of set it up,
Yeah.
that something would be literally caught in, like flushing down a drain, right? And it would go into the sea from there, right? And that was my first word, that's it.
That makes literal perfect sense.
It was logical, exactly.
Before I got my little pretty transfers that I have saved over the years, I used just, like sunflower oil, cooking oil. And literally, I used to put that. And I mean, as a kid, I was obsessed with making weird potions in the back garden.
Oh,
and one of the things we used to do, we used to put like flower petals into oil, and I used to draw little things on windows and on the doors. Now, I grew up in a house, and many Irish people grew up in a house where there was a holy water font by the front door. And the idea was that you blessed yourself going in or out. But, and people blessed houses with holy water. So, like, it didn't seem to me to be anything odd in, using something like that. And I have to say, one of the first things I ever did was a spiral.
Yep.
It just,
as you're talking actually about childhood stuff, I'm reminded, and I hadn't really put it into this kind of category before, but I remember my mother being very upset with me at one point because I had taken her clove of garlic and put it all on top of my door frame and my window. And that I would have been 8, 9, I suppose, at that point. And she wanted the garlic for dinner, and I'd used it all. And she's like, where? And my sister told on me. So, I got in trouble for that. But that was because garlic, now, I mean, in my brain, it was something like vampires coming in the window or whatever. But it was a ward, right? It was warding against it. And I also, from earlier than that, sorry, Jared, just one sec.
No.
From earlier than that, every child of our age, of our generation, would have grown up with prayer. As I lie down to go to sleep, I pray to God my soul to keep, and if I die before I wake,
I pray the Lord
my soul to take. Right now, terrified the life out of me as a small child. Like, scared the bejesus out of me.
I was convinced I would die in my sleep.
Dying in my sleep. My soul's gone. Have to do something to stop this, right? Obviously, clearly, action was needed. So there was a second part to that prayer, which isn't as common, but Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, God bless this bed that I lie on, right? We had bunk beds at the time. And my sister always got the top bunk because she was a little bit more assertive than me, shall we say, right? Even though I'm the older. But I would go around to the 4 corners of the bunk beds, and each post was a Matthew, a Mark, a Luke, and a John. I was casting a fucking circle around my bed, but it was like a
rectangle, but you did it.
It was a bubble, basically. I was putting us in a bubble, right, using these 4 points. And I suppose I never really thought of that as warding before, but that's actually what it is, right? It's exactly what it is.
And my brain as a child worked exactly like that. Very, very familiar territory there. I have to say, the other thing that was as a child, and I have to say as an adult, like I've never really lost it, stones, little pebbles, and particular types of pebbles. Now, it's not all one type. It's not a quartz or literally. You pick up a pebble and just something feels right in your hand. And that ends up going into my pocket. I carry it around with me. It's in my hand. Like I've got at least one in my bag, my handbag at the moment. Shells from a beach. Absolutely cannot go to a beach or leave a beach. And I find it quite amusing that my youngest cannot leave a beach without taking a stone and will put it in his pocket. And I just watch this. That's me. He is me walking around, and little stones by windows. And I used to like leave them so the moonlight could get them.
Yeah.
And that was a very comforting ward. That was a very comforting thing for me.
Yeah.
I would say as people listen to this, they've probably gone in their own head, they'll spark off little thoughts of, I used to do this as a kid. I used to do that.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Do you know the way they say, listen to your inner child?
Yes.
Listen to your inner,
Yes.
because as children instinctively know what makes them feel comfort and what makes them feel safe.
Yeah.
And they're not self-conscious about it. And if there was something you did like that, that's you touch back to that because that is what made you feel safe. You have a connection with it.
Yeah,
Reach back,
absolutely.
touch it.
Absolutely.
The other thing, can I just
Yeah,
jump
no,
in
go
at
on.
this
Yeah,
point? And it might be a little premature, but we're talking about here about wards. And the way I look at it is a ward is like a burglar alarm. It will stop the burglar, you know, it stops the person coming in. But when we talk about this area, we say wards and hexes. And a hex is more like the barbed wire at the top of the spikes that you put around your house. So the wards we're talking about, I associate with comfort and security and safety. The other add-on to that, the people can do or not as they are comfortable. I come from a tradition which is very comfortable with it, and other people don't. But the hex is the punishment for maliciously attempting to breach your barrier.
Yeah.
And it's very important that people understand it is not just a willy-nilly, oh my God, like wards are good, hex is bad. It is, if someone maliciously attacks you, it is quite a good idea to have some barbed wire at the top of a spike on the top of your wall around your garden.
Yes, it should activate a laser as far as I'm concerned.
Yes,
that, like,
absolutely.
go straight to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but like, so wards, you know, I associate with symbols of like you. I mean, the spiral and it catching. That is classic. You know, that is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Hexes are a little bit different, and for me, would usually, again, we're talking about intent. You must be very, very clear in your intent, and I would associate them more with, for example, putting like a word written in oil on your window pane. Or it should be quite hidden, it shouldn't be obvious, and it should be very, very tailored to what you want to achieve.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, you know, if you're starting off as a beginner, your wards are going to be plenty. You know, if you're not being actively targeted, then a ward is going to be absolutely plenty to be just bouncing off any kind of negative. You know, when your one down the road looks in your window and says, you know, has a little fit of the jealous green-eyed monster, and you know, you don't want that stuff kind of coming in through your window, right? So, you know, it can be as simple as that. And obviously then, you know, as you get more experience and you know, you kind of level up, if you like, your own personal practice. I'm not talking about any kind of hierarchy here, just in your own experience levels. Like in a video game, right? You will be able to do more things, you know. And be more comfortable and be more effective, you know.
And if someone is in a position, I mean, a lot of people will be in a very ordinary level of safety or security. But if someone is in a situation that's fraught and full of danger and insecure, then exploring the idea of just that little added protection behind the ward and the safety of the ward may actually be necessary, because if you're living in a situation where someone is actively, particularly like emotionally abusing you, but particularly where you feel constantly attacked or under strain, their intent is so strong that you may need to bulk up the intent to match. So there's so many variations, like there's so much.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a really good example, actually, just to segue into from the Irish tradition specifically. Now I know it's not just Irish, but it definitely featured very strongly, would be what's now called the witch's bottle, right? But it is at its most element, you know, you're talking about choosing your materials. You get a little bottle or a jar, usually glass, and you would take the materials that would be traditionally associated with protection in Ireland. So that would be rowan berries. There would be usually pins or needles, you know, something kind of steel. There could be little bits of broken glass in there, and I'll explain why in a minute. Sometimes urine was added to it, right?
A
Um,
lot of it.
yes. Red thread then would have featured and maybe sealed with wax, you know. Um, so, and a very simple version of this would be literally taking two rowan sticks, and rowan is mountain ash here. So rowan, two rowan sticks and crossing them over, but actually any wood or any sticks, and tying them with red thread and making a little cross, and then that would be a protection symbol that you could hang up. Just as we're talking about materials, that would be one to mention. But the witch's bottle particularly, when you combine those materials to create the ward, what you end up with is effectively a little trap, right? So it acts as a ward, it acts as a barrier, but it also acts as a hex, because that's why the sharp materials are in there. That's why the broken pins or anything like that. The urine is even used as a lure. Now I will put a little caveat on that. The urine would actually be, when you're talking about the she, particularly if you're protecting from otherworldly energies. Um, there's kind of two schools of thought as to why the urine would have been in there. One is that urine is very repellent to anything otherworldly. They absolutely hate it. They detested the thought of crossing over that,
Yeah.
or engaging with that would just be like, um, not appealing to otherworldly entities, shall we say. So you've got that kind of supernatural protection element there. But from a human danger element, if somebody is actually magically kind of targeting you, honing in on you, you have physical DNA, you have physical energy, physical manifestation within that urine. Blood would be another one. Now I know we're getting way into the weeds here, but it is part of the Irish tradition, so it should be talked about, it should
Yeah.
be mentioned, and there's nothing wrong with it, right? So the urine would actually act as a lure in that sense, to literally draw whatever malignant, negative,
Yeah.
or potentially harmful energy. It's kind of acting as a little substitute for you. So it's not being drawn to you, it's being drawn to this particular source. And then it gets trapped then in the bottle. And, so that would be a very, I mean, we talked about traditional. I mean, we are talking a couple of hundred years. It's not ancient. Well, as far as we know, you know. Um,
Yeah. I mean, there is a general sense in which we can say that a lot of folk practices are echoes
mm,
of a much older past. And you see
yes.
it if you study anything to do with yeah, even magical kind of things that are mentioned within any saga or any literature that we have in Old Irish, you will see that echoed into modern practice,
Mm,
but it is an echo. It's not so
yeah.
we just
It's
have
not
to
a
be
direct
very
line. Yeah.
aware,
Yeah.
like that it's an
Yeah.
echo. But, the way I look at it is the last 400 years of Irish history were a little busy and fraught. And we are the descendants of people who survived famine, who
Yeah.
survived brutal genocidal oppression, and we are thriving. So the old ways, they did something right. And
Absolutely.
at a time when our people weren't allowed to have doctors, we couldn't have any kind of help. We had no, I mean, for a large period, we weren't allowed to have priests. We had nothing. We were thrown on our own resources, and we survived with our heritage
Yeah.
in a better shape than it has any right to be, considering what they tried to do to
Yeah.
it. So
Exactly.
the old ways worked.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
we are the living proof of that. So
Yes. Exactly. So yeah, your materials, you want to basically choose materials that are going to resonate and align with your intention for the wards, with your own personal circumstances and all of that. And then when you get to step 4, we're still calling it, we create the wards. Um, there's many different ways to create the wards. We've obviously talked about some of them already. Some common methods would include placing, stones or crystals or herbs at the 4 corners of your property, drawing symbols on your doors or windows, as we've talked about, or creating a protective circle around your property. That could be walking the boundaries, and would be very much a part of the Irish traditions, particularly at festivals and, turning points of the year. The boundaries would always be walked on and walked around. So I I think we've kind of covered those, have we? We creating the wards.
so I'm like, I mean, again, just I suppose it's worth reiterating.
Mm.
You can use a physical representation like anything, like my transfers, like stones, like if that's not your bag or you can't find something, don't put it off till you find the perfect thing.
Oh, absolutely. Use
You
anything.
know what I mean? Like use
Use
anything.
Here you go.
Do you,
Here's a cup. This can be a
yeah,
ward right now.
there
Like we
you
can
go. You know,
literally,
yeah.
we can put some water in it and it can act as a little trapping pool by the front
You
door.
can
You know.
and you can anoint your windows, our doors with oil. You
Mm,
know, a simple thing to do is
yeah.
to take herbs that are associated with protection,
Mhm.
rowan berries as well, and pop them into a little container full of sunflower oil, cooking oil, whatever oil you have to hand, and just infuse it for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And then some people will put it on the window so the sun can literally get through it.
Mm,
I like to put it where the sun and the moon. If you can
mm,
get both, I think that's
yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
But again, you
Yeah.
don't even have to do that. If your intent is clear enough, you can use that to protect yourself. And that alone, if that, if you, I don't think you need to even be clever about it.
Mm.
That is enough if your intent is clear.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. And if you have a tree in your front garden, that tree can become a ward, you know. I would maybe put that more because a tree is a living entity, obviously, and a plant or anything that you're using like that. I would put that more in the ally category, which is maybe a whole other ball game,
yeah.
but they would function as a ward if you can build relationship with them. But Laura, how do you build relationship with a tree? Well, I do have a whole class at the Irish Pagan School about native Irish trees, and you can absolutely go into that. And there's a guided journey there where you can meet the spirit of the tree. And I would always use my journeying practice. There's free classes at the Irish Pagan School about how to, journey and meet these entities and all the rest of it. So those tools are there for you. Absolutely go and check out both the free and the paid resources. And again, that checklist, that free gift that we've created, really does cover a lot of this. So absolutely make use of those free resources that are there for you. But, and that's where you can kind of start to practically bring in those allies and those,
yes.
ancestors, all of that you kind of set your intention for earlier, maybe. Bring them on board, like get them on the same page as you, you know.
And this brings us back again to integration, to integrating your life with your
Yes.
daily life and your magical intent. And like that, ancestors, they're not just a pretty altar. You
Absolutely.
have
Yeah.
to, they have to be part of your daily life and your daily practice. Being connected to things like living entities like trees, walking the boundaries, feeling a guardianship of land or city. This should all, you could start by warding your house
Mm.
and bit by bit,
It grows
there's no
into a
race,
practice.
but bit by
Yeah.
bit, yeah,
Yeah.
build it
Yeah.
out
Yes.
and integrate it. And some New Year's Day you'll go, this is a great day to renew all the wards in my house,
Mm.
and you'll find yourself calling on the ancestors. You'll find yourself dressing the tree. And all of this will just be as natural as breathing
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's all built
Yes.
up into this
Exactly. Yeah.
integrated
Yeah.
practice.
And when you try and kind of come at it from the other side, it can be very overwhelming, especially if you're not kind of sure what good resources are. There's a lot of shite on the internet. There really is, especially about Irish or Celtic anything. Um, and so we're really trying to kind of simplify it here and take it back to basics. But as Ger said, it's an excellent point, Ger. Like it really does become part of then, these living traditions then become a part of your living spirituality, your actual practice. Um, so yeah, so we mentioned plants as well. Like you can actually use the plant pot, if you have a plant by your door or a planter outside your door, even, you could use the actual pot then, and you could paint a symbol onto that to create a ward. There's 101 different ways of doing it. Your only limit really is your imagination, I suppose. And if you do have questions, we're going to post this on YouTube, and I think we're going to put it on the podcast as well. So if you're listening on the podcast, pop over to the YouTube channel. You can ask questions underneath the video. If you have specific questions, we'll keep an eye on it. Um, but then once all this is set up, Ger, oh, and one thing I wanted to give an honourable mention to is because as we record this, we're in January here, February is coming up. The Bridget's Cross is a fantastic ward.
Yes. And this year
Fantastic.
is going to be the year to
Mm,
bring a Bridget Cross into here.
yeah.
We are finally we have all 4 major
Yes.
festivals. We have
Yes.
a bank
Yes.
holiday.
Yes.
Let's
Yes.
really make this Bridget's year.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And time of the year, then, again, we have resources and we have classes at the Irish
Yeah.
Pagan School about the fire festivals and the traditions. We have both theory and practice resources available on the blog and all the rest of it. So please do make sure that you're popping through all those resources. Inbog is in February, and that would be St. Bridget's Day is the 1st, isn't it? Or the 2nd? The 1st, I think, isn't it?
First,
1st of
yeah,
February, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And Bridget is a great one, especially if you're, especially if you're talking about Irish ancestors. And, we talked about Christian ancestors, and there's a lovely blend between the Christian and the pagan traditions within St. Bridget, or the goddess Bridget, who was of the Tuatha De Danann. So that's all a lovely tradition. And actually, one of our teachers at the Irish Pagan School, Orla Costello, we do have a class there, Introduction to Bridget, but she also runs a fantastic blog called My Bridget's Forge. And you can find her. The Bridget stuff has been absolutely taken over worldwide. So if you really want a native voice, check through Orla Costello's. I think she has the Bridget's Forge Facebook group as well, so you can use that as a point of contact too, to learn anything and all. She's a specialist. She's a priest of Bridget, so that would definitely be a fantastic starting point there. But the Bridget's Cross, do I even have an example here? I think no, you can't really see it. It's kind of back there. But they're the equal armed. Usually what you'll see is the equal armed cross made of rushes. Just in case anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, you could Google Bridget's Cross and you'll find so many examples of it in Google Images. Sometimes you get a triple armed cross, and there's different areas in Ireland had different ways of making them and different designs for them. But again, certainly of our generation, every school child grew up,
Yeah.
we'd bring the rushes in, or sometimes use plastic drinking straws. And that would be your Bridget's Cross brought home. But that would be either put up over the hearth to protect the house against fire for the year
Yeah.
and lightning, or it would be put at the front and or back door. So that would be a traditional ward here in Ireland, to keep you healthy for the whole year. And the other one then that deserves an honourable mention when we're talking about the actual creation of wards would be an iron horseshoe. And I know that's not just Irish, that is kind of global, I think almost, certainly European, and has travelled through the new lands. But yeah, just the iron horseshoe then would be one. And iron, again, would be specifically about keeping out the supernatural influences and the otherworldly energies, but kind of works as a panacea, I think, as well. You will hear different opinions on whether it should be points up or points down.
Oh no,
Points up.
It's points up.
Yes, it's always points up.
Oh God, it points down gives me anxiety. It really
Absolutely,
does. It's like,
absolutely.
no, all of your luck will fall out. It
Yes.
has to be points up. It really does. We have one over the house here, and we've one in what used to be my shop in the premises in town, and that was there for hundreds of years. Like, I mean, I couldn't even tell you. Like,
Yeah.
so it's a really old practice, and it is really working. Do you know there is somebody, I can't remember their name, but if you Google, they'll find it, who makes beautiful modern ones using recycled horseshoes.
Oh, wow.
And they're just like, and you can have them done in different ways. You know, you can get a really pretty version.
Yeah.
But and that's an Irish creator who does them. So
Yeah.
that it's well worth having a look for something like that. And if you could get one that was made in Ireland, so much the better, you know.
We have, I don't know if you can see it here. Again, like our altars are behind us, so that's why I keep kind of referring back. But I have my little witch doll that my mammy made me when I had my green hair. But this might be the same creator, Ger, I don't know. But this is actually part of Bookends.
Yeah.
When we ran the Heritage Crafts shop in Roscommon, this guy came into us and he was making them. I can't remember where he's from, but it's probably a couple of them. But
I'd say there's a few of them. And
yeah.
It is so worth.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
so
having one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would not be without one, I have to say.
No. And we even have, just speaking of, you know, houses and everything, in our car, because we, you know, we would do a lot of site quests, as we call them. We used to, before COVID, we were doing monthly, and we're hoping to get back to that, actually, as we can kind of start to travel around a bit more, because we miss it, you know, myself and John. But we would regularly end up in unusual places, let's just say, supernaturally active places, you know, very, very otherworldly energies and entities flying around. And one of the things that I had from, I suppose, I call him an uncle, but my family history is down in County Clare, and there was friends of my granddad's, three old bachelor men who were friends of my granddad's, who I would have grown up with kind of as grand uncles, basically, you know. And one of them, Paddy Toohey, was a horse trader. He was a horse whisperer, basically, you know, and he bred some of the best race horses, you know, would have come out of the Tooheys down in Clare. And so from his stables, after he died, they had just the wooden door in the shed, you know, and a nail sticking out of the wooden door, and a nail sticking out of the shed, and a piece of chain, just old iron chain that closed the shed door, you know. And after he died and the farm was gone and everything, there was a piece of chain on the ground one day, obviously had fallen off one of those door catchments, and I picked it up, and that's actually our iron chain. That's our charm that we keep in our car, you know. So John particularly would, he wouldn't be great now with staying out of trouble, let's just say. He earned his name Mr. Stompy for a reason, you know. He would just kind of wander through things, and it's not that he's kind of like deliberately oblivious, let's just say.
Yeah.
So I got a little bit anxious on some of these site visits, and I was like, John, would you mind just carrying this? Now, obviously, he knew what I was doing, right? But so it goes from the car to John, you know.
Yeah, depending who needs it most.
Yes. But it's always in the car. It's just there in the driver's side. And again, it can be something as simple as that. That is ancestry to me. That is family tradition. That is my own heritage. You know, guardianship. All of those things are kind of tied in just in that one simple piece of chain, you know.
That, I think, is such an important point, that you can take something that has personal meaning to you. It doesn't have to have universal symbolism. It can be something. If you said to someone, I use an iron chain, and they picked up an iron chain, it's not going to work the same way. You know what I mean? It's something that had incredible meaning for you. And that makes it powerful as well. Exactly. I have the name of the person. It's Biddy's Good Luck Horseshoes in Kilkenny. Awesome. Yeah, love their stuff.
Yeah.
There you
go. Brilliant. Not affiliated. We just like
it's just actually literally
not an ad.
You know, it's my Instagram kind of mind. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, pretty pictures. Renewing the wards,
maintaining the wards, exactly. So we're on point 5. We've made it there.
We've got there. But that, just when you were saying about the chain, that is something so imbued with meaning. It doesn't need renewing. It has integral meaning. And I mean, ideally, everything would have that level of, but it doesn't. You know what I mean? We have, and again, it's like the energy building up in your house. Even if the energy is good energy over the year, it gets stale, and frequent renewal. I like personally, and some people would find this maybe too much to do, but for me, there's a different energy in spring. There's a different energy in summer. There's a different energy in autumn and winter. I like to renew each.
I do at the fire festivals as well. I do exactly
that. I like that. Yeah. If you don't, again, that's not wrong. But for me, at least once a year, you have to clear that energy out. And we talked about that at the beginning. It's exactly the same thing. Use whatever method or means at your disposal.
You literally just cycle back and restart the process.
Exactly. I would say, if the area that you've chosen to ward is something as small as your bedroom or a bed or like an area in a house, that does really need to be thoroughly re-energized, I think, a little more often than a year.
I would agree. Definitely, I would agree.
And it can be as simple as, you know, the way like you're changing the sheets in your bed, you're doing your washing. That in itself, stripping the bed, opening the window, letting the air in, cleaning it, doesn't have to be elaborate, but you can make your bedroom fresh again. You can, and that itself is, you know, and again, when you add intent into it, something that's very mundane becomes something important to you and becomes part of your daily life. And it's ritualized and it has a little more meaning. And then, like, as I say, I would do it with the different seasons, the changing of the seasons. I would very strongly stress, if you have a bereavement in the house, or you have a major upheaval or some major change of circumstances, let the dust settle. There's no point in doing it and there being more upheaval. Let the dust settle. And then you've got to cleanse, you've got to clean, you've got to get it out, and then renew your wards. And again, it's intent. You don't have to be elaborate. You intentionally renew them. They're in place, but you recharge. And like, you know, you don't want to say to people, you have to do this over and over again, but anything that you do as a regular maintenance of that space, you will get back. You'll get it back in a better energy, in, you know, more personal, just comfort for yourself. And, you know, for mental health, I think it's incredibly important as well, for me anyway.
Absolutely. And just as you're saying about changing the beds, I have a lavender room spray that I literally just spritz when, you know, when I'm changing the beds. And again, that's back to purification tools. Lavender would be purifying for me, you know, but also it's a good one for the bedroom. The whole idea of the cycles is actually very important as well. And I think it's important in Irish spirituality, Irish paganism and magic, but getting yourself into that rhythm, that cycle, you know. And I mean, we mentioned the neurospiciness earlier. That can actually help with that as well. You know, it can kind of provide the impetus to actually like overcome executive dysfunction or anything like that. Now, it doesn't have to, and it doesn't always, and no shame on anybody who, you know, it doesn't work.
Literally the words executive dysfunction were dancing through my brain as you said that. It's suffer a bit better,
I'm speaking from my own experience here. You know, it kind of gives that extra kick up the arse to actually get it done. You know, now is the time.
There's a reason why we dress our houses for the holiday season. There's a reason why we spring clean. These things didn't come about by chance. They're not modern inventions. You know, we do this because these actions, they help us. You know, otherwise we would have just left them behind. I mean, humanity is actually a sharply evolving animal. You know, when things don't serve us, they fall into disuse. And these things haven't. They've morphed and they've changed and they've become more modern because they serve us well. And I think anything like that is so important. It really is.
And Ger, I know we had talked about maybe doing a kind of a digital element to this, but I think we're kind of, maybe we'll do a part 2, you know, for online warding and online and digital.
I would love to do that. I'm obsessed with online magic, to be honest with you, with digital magic. I have to say I can bore for Ireland on the subject. I really, in the monologue Ireland Olympics, I'm you know, I'm a gold medalist.
You're not boring. You're never boring, Ger.
I love that whole, and it's an area that it surprises me so few people seem to recognize. You know, I mean, it's literally how much technology is part of our lives now. Why would we not extend what we do in our reality to our virtual reality?
And so I think that we can maybe put a pin in that for now. I hate that term, but you know what I mean. And if people are interested in seeing a part 2, comment below the YouTube. Let us know, and we will get our ship together and align them in the night and try and make that happen again. Okay.
And if they're not interested, Laura, I will just ring you someday and tell you anyway.
Great.
There you go.
That is a conversation for over coffee. If nobody else wants to listen in, that's fine. Because I think we're very much on the same page about it. So I'd like to maybe swap techniques because it's relatively new, you know, it's relatively new.
It is. And that's what I love about it.
But I mean, relatively new, but the pair of us have been doing it for the last 30 years. So.
We're just old.
Yeah,
When
we're
you
just
get to my
old. We're
age, you
just
just
old.
realize
Yeah,
you're
we're just
old, and
old. We're just old.
everything isn't new anymore
Yeah.
because you've been doing it for a
Yes.
very long
Yes.
time.
Yes. Geraldine and I met in Yahoo chat groups many years ago.
Ah, that was a while back.
It
Yes,
was. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So I do want to make sure that people know that Geraldine has classes at the Irish Pagan School. What I'll do is I'll leave a link below. We've mentioned some. We've mentioned Drake Kjol. We've mentioned the urban paganism. I'm blanking. Is there a third one? Am I blanking on that?
There's the
Rosk.
Ross
Rosk poetry.
and
That's
the
it.
gazing, fire gazing.
Fire gazing. Yes, absolutely. So there's many classes, and also in January 2023 we are doing a life rights class as well, Irish life rights, which is Geraldine's specialty, actually. Fantastic, or one of one of in your multi-talented bag of tricks. So I'm very excited for that class. That will be the last Sunday of every month. We do run a live class on the last Sunday of every month, and we'll be doing it through 2023 and beyond, hopefully, which will be from a range or a mix of teachers, myself and John and Geraldine and many others at the Irish Pagan School. So I will leave a link to all of that below. And I leave like a joint link for all of Geraldine's classes. How about that? Because that way, even if you're watching this at some time in the future, you'll actually get a link to everything that Geraldine teaches at the Irish Pagan School, and also your websites and all. I'll copy all those into the notes below.
Absolutely.
Okay. So is there anything else that you want to finish on?
No, just and again, if people do have questions,
Yeah.
drop them in. Like you know what I mean. We cover a lot, but there's always
Yeah.
something we didn't think of,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and if I just want to kind of finish, I suppose, on, because again, overwhelm is something we have talked about a lot here. And again, Geraldine and I are very experienced practitioners. We have run the gauntlet of all sorts of experience over the years, dealing with different situations, mentoring and priesthood to many different people who were in those kind of different situations. So we would have a lot of experience under our belts, both individually and collectively. But I really don't want people to be overwhelmed. Like those 5 points that I mentioned at the top of the video, you can like start from where you are, right? Grab that free gift, the checklist that's below. Start, work through. It's a checklist. You literally can pick one thing and just check it off. It's given in suggested order. So if you're completely new to it, you can literally just start through that. And set one ward at your bedside and start there. Your intention would be for a good night's sleep, and no kind of negative energies to come at you when you're asleep. And you can literally start that simple. You can when you're having a shower, you can literally kind of you can draw a little spiral in the steam on the shower door or on the window or whatever, and that can act as a ward for the day. It wouldn't last very long, but that's your ward for the day, right? You could literally draw a spiral over your heart and say, my intent is to protect myself for the day. It can
yeah,
honestly be as simple or as complicated as you need or want it to be. But I actually think everybody who is an experienced practitioner, who is talking about, I'm going to take care of my entire city or this whole county that I live in, also do the little shower thing and have the ward by your bed. And don't
yes,
forget your simple practices, because that is,
yeah,
those kind of little stepping stones are what all of our spiritual traditions and all of our magical practices can and should, I believe, should be made of. Those little daily integrations, as Geraldine said earlier, they build up into a cohesive spiritual tradition for yourself that is personalized, that is relevant, that is effective. Obviously magic
yeah.
should be effective. And, don't ignore the simple things. And wherever you're at, you can just start there, and you can start there today.
Now, there was one specific question I was asked and I forgot to address, and it was
Right.
really,
Yeah, no,
really
please do.
quickly.
Please do.
Someone asked about words of power.
Okay.
And one of the simplest things to understand is if you take a word that has power, now it can be something that means something to you, or it can be a word like resilience or protection, and particularly if you can translate it into the Irish, I think
Mm-hmm.
myself, that's an added layer. But if you have that written, somewhere in your house. If you have that, even perhaps as a talisman that you carry with you out into the world, that is a really important thing to do. Now, the word that you pick needs to have resonance for you, and if possible, should be a word that others might recognize as being powerful.
Yeah.
That makes it kind of universal. And so if someone was to come up against you emotionally or spiritually, they will understand that that word is a warning. If it's no, you don't pass here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you find something you like, you use it, you can write it on your window, you could put it on a piece of paper and maybe put it under your little rock by your bed.
Yeah.
No problem. Any way that you feel to use it, you can carry it in your wallet. One of the questions was, though, like that is fairly straightforward, but do you carry it forward into the year with you? And I would say yes.
Yeah.
I do more than that. Every year, rather than resolutions or anything like that, which I think are self-defeating, I pick a word to live by. Last year, everyone in the family, including the kids, picked a word to live by for the year.
Yeah.
And we printed it out and we tried to live up to it for the year. If you have a word of power that you use for your protection, think of it in exactly the same way. It's like a resolution for the year. You're going to make choices. And you say to yourself, I am going to make choices that live up to that. And again, protection, resilience, and boundaries is a really good word.
Yeah.
Boundaries. And it acts as a reminder to you, and it also keeps you safe during the year.
Absolutely.
So sorry, that was just something I didn't want to address that one question.
I really appreciate that. And it kind of reminded me, I did briefly mention the OM and I said that I'd get back to it and I didn't.
Yes.
I actually am doing a lot of work on this kind of thing through the OM Academy. Because the next stage to that, when you get into kind of magical side of things, for me is you're translating it into Irish and then you can write it in OM, and using the OM then as a magical language, as a sigil, then you're creating a sigil. So sigils and wards are not quite the same thing, but they can act in the same functions.
Yeah.
And a sigil can be a type of ward, if that makes sense. So having that word translated into Irish and then written in OM is actually how I would often, like, my eldest child came to me looking for a protective thing that he could carry around, and that was what I did. I got a Post-it and I meditated and journeyed on a particular word that was going to be relevant for him for this particular purpose. And I wrote it in OM and I charged it, and I gave it to him, and he carries it then in his phone case, and that's a ward, it's magic. It's all of those things.
That is literally,
yes.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And to bring Jer's point of sound into it as well, that word then can also be vocalized. If you find yourself, if you have this protective sigil or ward that you're carrying around with you, or that's printed out on your wall or whatever it is, you can actually vocalize that then to energize that, to connect to that, to sound and matter are the mother and father of OM, whether that's in OM or in Irish. It can get very complicated, but it can just be that simple. It could be one OM letter even. So if people do want to know about that, I've started a whole new school about the OM, because it's my thesis topic, but it's also my very much my area of interest and specialty, I like to think. So om.academy, OGHAM.academy. You will find there's a blog, there's a mailing list, there's going to be classes in the new year, there's all the rest of it. So you can absolutely go over there. There's resources over there. And there's YouTube videos as well on my YouTube channel, my other YouTube channel. So I think that's all the questions answered, and I think that's everything that we kind of wanted to touch on. We'll do a part 2 on digital if people are interested. Comment below. If you want to check out the resources, we will have links to everything below the YouTube video. All Jer's classes, life rights, poetry, novels, all that wonderful, wonderful content and goodness that you're putting out into the world. You're so impressive.
Thank you very much.
Seriously, very, very impressive. And we'll have links to all of that. We will have links, of course, to that checklist. So if you do nothing else, download that checklist and just start working through those resources, okay? And just kind of familiarize yourself with that. And set a ward before you go to sleep tonight. This is your action point. This is your action step. Set a ward by your bed this evening, tonight, before you go to sleep, in the simplest way that you can manage. Actually, make it a challenge for yourself to keep it simple, right?
Yes.
No matter your level of experience, keep it simple. Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Ger.
Thank you for having me.
Sorry for taking you away from your children and your family. Give them all my best, and your mammy.
I will do. I am actually going to pretend this call goes on for at least half an hour longer.
Love it.
I'm just going to be sitting here with the headphones on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Slán go fóill, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Slán.
Bye.